A powerful billionaire, a lonely little girl in a wheelchair, and a quiet security guard hiding a life-changing secret. This is not just a story about money or status. It's about what happens when love breaks through walls of silence, ego, and regret. Mr. Grant's days ran like a perfectly timed machine. From boardrooms to private jets, everything ran with surgical precision. His New York penthouse was quiet, more like a museum than a home. Cold walls, clean lines, expensive silence. In one corner of this vast silence lived 8-year-old Lila. Fragile, bright-eyed, and silent more often than not, Lila moved through her days in a sleek black wheelchair that looked like it belonged to a tech showroom. A rare condition had taken her ability to walk 2 years ago, and with it, something else had disappeared too: her smile. Technically, she lived with her father, but in reality, she lived with nurses, assistants, and Kevin, the quiet security guard who stood in the hallway like furniture. Mr. Grant rarely saw her. He had tried in his own way, but work always won. After his wife died in an accident 5 years ago, the warmth in the house evaporated. He buried himself in meetings and mergers, convincing himself that money was enough, that providing everything would replace presence. On a Tuesday afternoon, earlier than expected, Mr. Grant returned home. A meeting had been canceled. Unusual, but welcome. As he stepped into the marble-floored hallway, the silence felt heavier than usual. He walked into his office and dropped his briefcase, then glanced at the wall-mounted monitor out of habit. The camera feeds from the estate grounds flickered across the screen. Then he paused. Camera 4, the garden. Kevin was there, but not in uniform. His jacket was off. And in his arms, wrapped in a yellow blanket, was Lila. Her head rested on his shoulder and she was laughing. Not just smiling, but truly laughing. Her arms were loosely around his neck, and her feet dangled freely as he carried her through a trail of marigolds. Kevin said something, and Lila giggled again. Then he spun slowly, and her laughter grew louder, echoing faintly through the open garden doors. Mr. Grant stared at the screen. His finger hovered over the zoom button, then slowly lowered. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but something more unfamiliar: confusion, wonder, and a thin thread of something deeper: regret. Later that night, he asked the nurse if Lila had been feeling different. "She's been glowing this week," the nurse said with a soft smile, "especially when Kevin's around. He carries her outside, tells her stories. She waits for him more than anyone else." That night, Mr. Grant sat alone at his dinner table, chewing without tasting. His gaze was locked on the view, but his mind was elsewhere, in the garden with the laughter. He had not heard Lila laugh like that in years. Maybe never. The next morning, before leaving for a press conference, he paused outside the playroom. The door was slightly open. Kevin was inside. Lila was sitting on a rug, her legs stretched out, and Kevin knelt in front of her, holding her hands. "Now, push a little, just a little," Kevin said gently. "I can't," Lila whispered. "Yes, you can. I've seen you do hard things." Her fingers gripped him tightly. She leaned forward, a small tremble in her arms. Mr. Grant froze, watching. Her legs twitched, but no movement. She gasped, her face tight with frustration. Kevin didn't flinch or pull away. "That was good," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It is okay to try and fail. The important part is that you tried." Lila looked at him, searching his face. "Do you think I'll walk again?" There was a pause. Kevin smiled, not the usual fake adult smile, but one with weight. "I think even if you don't, you'll go further than anyone expects." She smiled. It was small, but real. Mr. Grant stepped back from the door, silently. That evening, he told his assistant to cancel dinner with the ambassador. "Tell them I have a personal emergency," he said. The assistant looked up, confused. Mr. Grant never missed dinner with dignitaries. He walked back to the security room alone and pulled up the archived footage from the last 3 days. Every clip told the same story. Kevin beside Lila in the garden, Kevin helping her brush her doll's hair, Kevin showing her constellations from the balcony. Mr. Grant did not fast forward. He watched it all, every second. By midnight, he sat in his study, sleeves rolled up, a drink untouched in his hand. He looked around the cold room, then back at the frozen frame on his tablet. Kevin holding Lila as she leaned her head on his shoulder, the way her hand clutched his shirt, the peace in her face, something twisted in his chest, a sharp pinch that he could not name. He barely slept. The next morning, Lila looked up from her coloring book and said, "Why are you home, Daddy?" He forced a smile. "Just taking the day off. Is that all right?" She nodded. "Kevin is taking me to the garden later." He hesitated. "Do you want me to come too?" She tilted her head, surprised. "You never do." "I know," he said quietly. "Maybe I should." She blinked, then nodded. "Okay." Mr. Grant walked away, heart heavy. Something inside him was waking up, but he did not know yet if it was too late. Mr. Grant did not go to the garden that day. He stood by the second-floor window instead, half hidden behind the curtain, watching. Below, Kevin pushed Lila's wheelchair along the stone path between the trimmed hedges. The air was warm, sunlight spilling through the trees. Lila's hair was tied with a blue ribbon, dancing with the wind. She looked alive in a way Mr. Grant barely recognized, like someone else's child, a free child. Kevin stopped near the swing bench and bent down. Lila wrapped her arms around his neck as he lifted her out of the chair, holding her gently, as if she were made of glass. Mr. Grant watched her face closely. The joy in her face hit him like a punch. That unguarded, glowing smile. It was not meant for him. Not once in years had she looked at him like that. Later, during dinner, Lila barely noticed her father sitting across the table. She was talking about the birds Kevin had shown her, a strange-looking squirrel, and how Kevin had promised her a story tonight. Mr. Grant nodded silently, chewing slower than usual. That night, he stood outside her room. Kevin's voice flowed through the slightly open door. He was telling her a story, not from a book, but from memory. Something about a girl who could not walk, but taught the stars how to dance. "And then what happened?" Lila whispered. Kevin paused. Then, the stars told her she did not need legs to move the world. Lila was quiet for a long time. "You make me feel like I can do anything," she said softly. Kevin's voice dropped low. "That is because you can." Mr. Grant turned away. He started leaving his meetings earlier, not to spend time with Lila, but to watch her, always from a distance. He justified it in his head. He was protecting her, observing the man he had hired. But the truth weighed heavier. Each laugh, each hug, each whisper. It chipped away at something hollow inside him. On the 5th day, in the garden, Lila fell asleep on Kevin's shoulder. Mr. Grant saw Kevin gently cover her with a blanket and sit beside her, eyes fixed on the sunset. That moment stayed with him. That night, he stared at the ceiling in bed. His wife's photo stared back at him from the nightstand. He picked it up. The smile on her face looked almost like Lila's. He whispered to the dark, "What am I doing wrong?" The next morning, Mr. Grant entered the garden unexpectedly. Kevin was setting Lila down on a soft patch of grass near the flowers. They both looked up, surprised. Mr. Grant tried to act casual. "Mind if I join?" Lila blinked. "Really?" He nodded. "I have been working too much." Kevin said nothing. Lila looked between them, then smiled. "You can sit here." She patted the grass. He sat stiffly, knees bent, unsure what to say. Kevin picked a daisy and handed it to Lila. She giggled. Mr. Grant watched as she made a daisy crown. Her fingers were slow, but careful. Kevin helped her tie the ends. She looked up and placed it on her father's head. "Now you're the king," she said, grinning. Mr. Grant let out a short, awkward chuckle. For a moment, everything felt soft. But later that day, the strange feeling returned. Not anger, not hate. Something worse, jealousy. A deep ache that someone else, someone hired, someone he'd considered beneath him, had unlocked the part of his daughter he'd failed to reach. That night, while watching the camera footage again, something snapped. He called his assistant. "Ask Kevin to see me in my office." 5 minutes passed. No one came. He called again. The assistant returned, nervous. "Sir, Kevin said he is unavailable at the moment." Mr. Grant's eyes narrowed. "Unavailable?" "He said he can speak to you later. He is with Lila now." Mr. Grant's jaw tightened. "Tell him I said it is urgent." The assistant left. 10 more minutes passed. Finally, Kevin appeared in the doorway, his face as calm as ever. "You wanted to see me?" he said, voice low. Mr. Grant stood up slowly. "Yes, sit." Kevin stayed standing. Mr. Grant folded his arms. "You are spending a lot of time with my daughter." Kevin said nothing. Mr. Grant took a step forward. "I appreciate the care, but you are not her father." Still, no response. "She is attached to you," Mr. Grant continued. "Too attached. This is starting to cross lines." Kevin finally spoke. "What do you want me to say?" "I want to understand your intentions," Mr. Grant snapped. "And why do you think it is okay to ignore my request for a simple conversation?" Kevin reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, sealed envelope. He placed it gently on the desk. Mr. Grant looked at it. "What is this?" Kevin nodded toward the envelope. "You should read it. Then we can talk." And without another word, Kevin turned and walked out of the office. Mr. Grant stared at the envelope. His fingers hesitated before lifting it. On the front, in soft blue ink, was a name written in familiar handwriting. His late wife's. Mr. Grant sat in silence, the envelope in his hands heavier than it looked. His wife's handwriting. It had been years since he had seen it. The smooth curves of her letters were still the same. The smell of her perfume suddenly came back to him, as if time folded for a moment. He took a deep breath and opened it. Inside was a folded letter, dated a few months before she passed. As he unfolded it, his hands trembled. The first line stopped his breath. "If you are reading this, it means I am no longer around. And that scares me more than anything, because I know how much you hate being left alone." His heart dropped. The voice of his wife echoed in his mind, as if she were in the room. "This letter is not just for you. It is for Lila, and for someone else who has always cared for her quietly, without asking for anything in return. Kevin." He leaned back slowly, disbelief tightening his chest. "Before I got sick, I made a decision. I asked Kevin to stay close, not as your employee, but as Lila's godfather, as her protector, as someone who would give her the softness that you, in your cold ambition, sometimes forget to show." Mr. Grant's eyes burned, but he kept reading. "You love her, I know you do, but you often show it through gifts, money, and plans. Kevin shows it in silence, in presence, in patience. That is what she will need, especially if I am gone." He stopped, struggling to breathe. "I am not asking you to give up your place as her father. I am asking you to let her have both kinds of love, yours and his. If you cannot be soft, let someone else be." The letter ended with a single line that cut deeper than all the rest. "Please do not be proud. Be present." He sat still for a long time, the paper trembling in his hand. The next morning, he woke early. He did not call Kevin. He did not call anyone. He dressed simply, without his usual suit and tie. Lila was already awake, playing with some stuffed animals in her room. Kevin was there, as always, sitting beside her and gently helping her stretch her legs. Lila smiled when she saw him. "Daddy!" Mr. Grant smiled back, awkward but trying. "Good morning, sweetheart." Kevin stood up quietly, giving them space. Mr. Grant looked at him. "Can we talk?" Kevin gave a slight nod and followed him out into the hallway. There was a pause between them, stretched tight like a wire. "I read the letter," Mr. Grant said finally. Kevin met his eyes, calm. "I was wrong," Mr. Grant added. "I let my pride talk before I even understood." Still silent, Kevin waited. Mr. Grant looked away. "You have been there for her more than I have." "That is not what this is about," Kevin said quietly. Mr. Grant nodded. "I know, but I need to fix things." There was another silence. Mr. Grant looked up. "Will you come back in?" "I never left," Kevin replied. Together, they returned to Lila's room. The day felt different, softer. Mr. Grant stayed longer, even helped Lila hold her favorite toy. At one point, she asked him to help her draw a rainbow, and he sat down awkwardly with a crayon in hand, not knowing how, but trying anyway. That evening, Kevin brought Lila to the garden again, but this time, Mr. Grant was already there, standing beside the wheelchair ramp. He held out his hand. May I? Kevin looked at Lila. She nodded with a shy smile. Mr. Grant took the handles of the wheelchair and pushed her gently toward the flowers. It was a quiet walk. Lila hummed a soft tune. Kevin walked beside them. At one point, Lila whispered something. I want to try standing again. They stopped. Mr. Grant looked at Kevin. Kevin gave a subtle nod. With slow, practiced care, they each took one of her hands and helped her up. Her legs trembled, her face strained with effort. She looked up at both of them, breathless. And then, without warning, she let go. One hand, then the other, and for just 2 seconds, maybe 3, Lila stood on her own. Tears sprang into her eyes, and theirs. I did it, she whispered. Mr. Grant dropped to his knees and hugged her tight. Kevin placed a hand gently on her back, steadying her. In that moment, the air shifted. No walls between them. No lines of power or pride. Just a child, her father, and the man who had been family all along. The night was quiet, but Mr. Grant's thoughts roared. He sat alone in his office, lights dim, the letter still on the desk in front of him. For years, he had filled this room with deals, numbers, decisions. He had ruled the world from behind this glass desk. But now, the only thing that mattered was a single piece of paper written in his wife's hand. He looked around. The silence pressed into him, thick and unforgiving. The next morning, he did something he had not done in years. He called his assistant and canceled every meeting. No meetings, no calls. Tell them I'm unavailable. The assistant hesitated. All day, sir. Yes, all day. He left the building without his usual motorcade. No suit, no tie. Just a jacket, jeans, and something unfamiliar on his face. Uncertainty. He knocked on a small apartment door on the edge of the city. Kevin opened it, surprised to see him. I need to talk, Mr. Grant said. Kevin stepped aside, wordless. The apartment was quiet and simple. It smelled like old books and coffee. A small photo showed Lila, around 3 years old, on Kevin's shoulders, both smiling. Mr. Grant sat nervously. Kevin stood. I thought giving her everything was enough, Mr. Grant said softly. Kevin waited, then replied, You were doing your best. But love is not a business, Mr. Grant nodded. I want to change. Then show her, Kevin said. They left together. Back at the mansion, Lila was in the garden. Her face lit up when she saw them. You came back, she said to Kevin. Then surprised. Daddy, you too? Mr. Grant knelt beside her. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. She smiled. Can we try again today? They helped her stand. Her legs shook. Kevin held one hand, Mr. Grant the other. Then, her hand slipped from Kevin's, but she took a step, holding only her father. I did it again, she said proudly. Mr. Grant hugged her tight. She whispered, I was waiting for you, Daddy. That night, Mr. Grant stayed with her. Dinner, brushing her hair, reading a bedtime story. She laughed when he messed up. He smiled every time she laughed. Kevin watched quietly. Thank you, Mr. Grant said later. For what? Kevin asked. For never leaving her, even when I did. In the days after, things changed. Mr. Grant burned eggs trying to cook. He took Lila to the park and ignored the press. When someone mocked him, Lila shouted, He is here now. You are brave, Mr. Grant said. I learned from Uncle Kevin. She grinned. One night, Mr. Grant gave Kevin an envelope. You're more than head of security now, he said. Your family. Lila ran in. Uncle Kevin, let's go to the garden. They walked together, holding hands. Lila looked up. Do you think Mommy can see us? I think she's proud, Mr. Grant said. Weeks passed. The mansion felt alive. Mr. Grant made pancakes, read bedtime stories, and waited outside therapy sessions. He chose time with Lila over work. One morning, Lila smiled. I don't need my wheelchair at school, just my walker. Mr. Grant's eyes teared up. I'm proud of you. Kevin added, we both helped, but you did the most. Mr. Grant said, I'm cutting back work hours. Really? Kevin teased. Even surprised myself, Mr. Grant laughed. On weekends, the mansion opened to kids with disabilities. Mr. Grant helped. Kevin was now Uncle Kevin. No press, just love. One day, Lila walked 5 steps alone. They watched, eyes misty. "You're crying again," she teased. "I'm the one walking." That night, Mr. Grant sat in his late wife's chair. Kevin handed him Lila's school photo. She stood in it. "She looks like her mother," Mr. Grant said. "She has your stubbornness," Kevin smiled. The next day, a custom bench was placed in the garden. It read, "In memory of Maria Grant, in honor of every silent sacrifice." Lila brought cocoa, one for Daddy, one for Uncle Kevin. As they sat watching the sunset, she asked, "Will things always be like this?" "No one knows," Mr. Grant said, "but I'll always be here, with you." Lila leaned on him. Kevin looked up. "She's watching." Mr. Grant nodded. "I hope she knows we finally got it right." The stars came out. No noise, just love, real and lasting. Sometimes, life does not teach us through grand gestures, but through the quiet moments we almost overlook. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that presence, not wealth, defines a family. And do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more heart-touching stories that reveal the truth behind everyday moments. Your support helps us keep telling stories that matter.